You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo, bringing you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. By the way, 90.3 is the newly announced winner of the Intercollegiate Broadcasting Systems Abraham and Borst Best College Radio Station in the Nation Award. Well, okay, now that we got that out of the way, on the line we have Nassau County Executive Laura Curran. Thank you for coming and joining us on a busy day for you, I'm sure. How are you? Good?
Happy to. I'm doing great, and congratulations on the award. Well deserved. That's wonderful for Nassau.
Thank you. Yes,
I appreciate that very much. And basically, we just wanted to start the discussion with, wow, can you believe it's been about a year since things kind of all changed for Long Islanders and for the world, for that matter. It's about a year later in this crazy crisis. So just want to give us your thoughts on governing and, kind of just a big picture, where we've been, where we are kind of situation.
It's hard to believe it's a year. It feels like 5 minutes and 100 years all at the same time. I mean, think about how much we've learned about first of all, the virus, about ourselves, about society, and the importance of making sure that, society function. The shutdown has been so devastating for so many people who are out of work, people who are having mental health issues, students who are struggling. I'm really happy now that we have a vaccine. If you can imagine a year ago today, when we didn't even know about wearing masks and how this thing was transmitted and how many people would have died. Now, here we are, fast forward a year, we have a vaccine. A quarter of our residents, 25% of our residents have so far at least had one dose of the vaccine. So we've really come a long way, and we've been through so much. We've lost so many people. But this is, the point in the pandemic where things are really starting to look up. Things are starting to reopen. We're getting more and more distribution of vaccine and, hoping that the economy picks up. Actually, I was just had a press conference yesterday talking about the Long Island Railroad and the cuts that were made. Yep. But of course, this is exactly the wrong time. Now that things are starting to open up, you want people to feel confident to take the train. You want people to get back to work. So anything that we can do on the government level, whether it's vaccine distribution, filling potholes, whatever it is to get life back to normal, we're there and we're doing it.
Oh, great. And we will have Long Island Railroad Chairman Phil Eng on the radio with us in a little while after our interview with you. So we're certainly interested in getting his thoughts on what has been a very tumultuous week for riders and for the LIRR itself. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But in terms of, like you said, it's been a crazy year. It's been a complex crisis that has many multifaceted impacts, like you said, economic. We've talked about the mental health, the opioid crisis, all these other things. There's a lot of quantitative data, the people who we see these numbers, the infection rates, but there's the qualitative data, all those individual lives that have been changed, those businesses that, had been working for so long to be a part of the community that aren't going to be maybe that anymore. But I know there are signs of hope. Like you said, there's a vaccine, there's the new economic relief package that's been released, kind of initial information by the White House and by the houses of Congress. So we do see good things. And even just yesterday, we saw that the Islanders happily won a game in the old barn, back for the first time, fans in the stadium. So we want to talk about that and, how that kind of segues into it also going to be a new vaccination site.
Yeah, we can talk about the Islanders first if you'd like.
Sure. I mean, I know you always are a fan. I don't want to mention that potential injury that we're looking at, but otherwise I know things are good.
So I don't know if you know this, but they have not lost a regulation game on home ice so far this season. And they're the only team to have done so. And then last night, of course, the streak continues with fans. I think they played so well because there are actual fans there. Now we had 1,000 healthcare workers there that were there as the Islanders guests. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting. It's good stuff. This is like a step back to normal. I know it's only at 10% capacity right now, but I'm looking forward to that number just continuing to go up as we get more vaccine and our hospitalization rates go down. It's another reason to feel optimistic. And then, of course, this is the last season, so I'm so happy we could get fans in for the last season at the barn before Belmont opens later this year.
Yep, we see that progress coming along steady as folks drive along the highway over there, of course. So everyone, I'm sure, is looking forward to it. But like you said, I know there's a lot of nostalgia factor. And, after a crazy, tough year, it certainly feels nice to have that sense of normalcy of one more time, one more run, hopefully a good long playoff run, at the Coliseum. So there is that, definitely. Bill, I guess, do you have other thoughts in terms of, both the vaccination site? I know that's planned. I know you have a partnership also with MSK, I think. I'm not sure if that's related to right there, but could you clear up again what's going on in terms of the announcement of Coliseum being potentially a vaccination site and the MSK partnership?
Oh, sure. So our first vaccination site, and I really have to thank Nassau Community College for being such wonderful hosts for us. That was our first Nassau County run site. It's going really well. I'm getting wonderful feedback from the people who are getting their vaccines there. And the college has just been fantastic. Dr. Jermaine Williams and everyone else on the team has been fantastic. So we're very grateful for that partnership. And it's right in the heart of our county. Then we opened one at Yes We Can Community Center in Westbury. That's up and running. And a third one, a smaller one at LIU Post. And now our fourth one, I'm actually doing a walkthrough later today at the Coliseum. And so this will be in the downstairs part in the exhibition hall. And again, great partnership with the Islanders and the operators of the Coliseum. It's a county-owned building, but it's run by the operator called Nassau Live, and they are wonderful partners. So it's going to happen in a way that's not going to interfere with the fans or the playing or anything like that. But it's another opportunity for people to get vaccinated. So we will be running 4 when this opens by the end of the month, along with, the hospitals are doing their own operations. The state is running Jones Beach. They're going to be opening SUNY Old Westbury. And we're really starting to see the manufacturing really open up, really ramp up, which is good news. So we know at the beginning, it was a real problem of supply. Demand was huge. Supply was small. Now we're getting more supply. So that's great. And we're finding more and more people who had been, hesitant, skeptical about the vaccine are more confident in getting it. And we want to make sure I'm doing a lot of town halls with different doctors from different communities, including Black and Hispanic communities where we know there may be a little more resistance and where there was more of an impact in of the virus. Talking to trusted stakeholders about why this is, and having trusted stakeholders talk to the community about why, we believe it's safe, we believe it's effective, and we hope that more people feel confident to get it.
Of course, especially as eligibility expands. So, Bill, let's hear your thoughts about where we're at. It
seems like a maybe a facetious question, but I'm curious. If I go to Nassau Coliseum to get the vaccine, do I pay $30 for parking?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I imagine it will be free, but I've got to sort that out. The vaccine itself is free. We're going to make sure that the parking is free.
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot of people want to know that. And I also think a lot of people may not go there because of that. I mean, it sounds crazy.
Really? Is that true? That's so interesting. We'll have to make that very clear then.
Yeah,
we hope not.
That was an issue the last time that I don't know when it reopened. I guess after the the redo when they
that
refurbished
was the go-to event, right?
And
parking was a big issue.
Yeah, people were very upset about what it cost to park there.
Of course, but knowing this is different than going to
granted, but you never just assume. Never just assume. And
we want to do everything we can. That's a great question. We have to make that very clear. We want to do everything we can to encourage people to get the vaccine. I think a $30 parking fee would not encourage.
Yeah, that would exactly.
Of course.
And I was asked that question, so I said, you know what? Okay, I'll ask. And okay.
Thank you for asking. I'll make sure we make that very clear.
Yeah. Oh boy. So what else is on the? Oh my goodness.
Well, we could just talk
about electronics.
Yep, the expanded eligibility. As we heard for the folks who caught President Biden's speech last night, that there is a very optimistic outlook for next month adults in general being eligible. But we also know that the state announced some expansions to folks who are 60 years old now and up, and also for, I believe, public-facing government employees and nonprofit workers. So I guess, do you see that that all kind of making sense, that's kind of coming together, the increased eligibility with the increased supply?
Absolutely. Increased eligibility with increased supply makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that there's more, older folks that are able to get it, because we know our older population is more vulnerable to complications from the virus. So that's good news. And we have a lot of, I was really pushing for our Department of Public Works workers to be eligible, because, these are the guys filling the potholes and plowing the roads and making sure everything runs smoothly. If they can't do their job because they're out, then that makes everyone suffer. That hurts life for everyone.
Yeah.
And if we talk about the importance of getting around on our roads, that's key. So I was very happy that the government workers can be eligible now. We have a lot of folks who deal with the public regularly. One thing that I'm also pushing for actually are members of the press. When I have these press conferences, these reporters are out there as much as anyone. They have people coming up to them all the time, and they're in 1C, and they're still not eligible. But I think it's important that they are. And I say this as a former member of the press.
Yep, that's a good point. I'm sure a lot of our colleagues out there are happy to hear that. Like we said, we all know how important local community journalism is. And like you said, especially for those nonprofit workers, knowing a lot of the work that they're doing on the front lines, whether it's the food bank kind of networks, whether it's these domestic violence kind of services, that it's a really important thing for people to be safe so that they can provide those much needed vital services. So
the only other thing I was curious about was you had mentioned the elderly being able to be vaccinated in their homes. Is there any program that's going to start to attempt to do that?
Yes, we are coordinating that. We are actually have a conversation with our medical care professionals, hospitals, et cetera, to talk about, to get their list of who's homebound, who needs to get this, because this is a big issue. Up to now, we haven't really had the capacity to do the home visits, but we're going to strategize on that, and I hope to have something to announce soon. Great.
Excellent. Okay, now I'm going to make a complete left turn, and I have some questions about the assessments. And
yes,
I still see these commercials on TV for, I think one of the companies is Maidenbaum or something, but they're all, talking about, let us help you with your tax grievance. Now, is that still something that Long Islanders should do or can do? Since seeing last time, we've spoken about this over the time, and the people who did grieve their tax assessment and got the benefit of it, basically, after a few years, were kind of told that somebody's making up the slack, that abatement of your, payment didn't go away. The numbers didn't change. You still owe that money. Somebody's paying for that. So are we still doing that?
Yes. So there is always a right to grieve your assessment. Everyone will have that right. And I support the right to grieve. You should always have a place where you can go if you think that it's inaccurate. So that's still happening. Now I have because of the pandemic, because the real estate market has been so volatile, we're seeing residential housing prices spike. We're seeing bidding wars. We're seeing houses that can stay on the market for maybe an hour or two before they're snatched up because there's such a demand for, a little more of a suburban quality of life right now.
Yep.
And at the same time, we're seeing the commercial properties perhaps trending the other way. A lot of our businesses are suffering. Unfortunately, some have closed. So they're so volatile that we've actually put a pause on the assessments, on the reassessment for 1 year, and allow some clarity and some calm to come back before we embark on the next reassessment, which I think is really important to give, there's so much chaos right now, to give people a little bit of consistency and clarity, I think is very important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when I talk to homeowners and taxpayers, it seems to me that the consternation is about the school taxes. It's as though the land tax, kind of stays pretty consistent, but it's the school taxes that are constantly being pushed up. And, this is a concern for the county. This is a concern for everybody, because we talk about the exodus from Long Island for people who are either newly graduated from school and want to make a start of a family. And Long Island is becoming less and less, the thing that can help that happen. It's people retire, they move. People get out of school, they move. Yeah. We're pretty soon we're just going to be, most of the people that live here will be extremely rich, and that'll be it.
Well, that's the concern. And we know that you had an announcement this week about affordable housing. I know you spoke about, I think, the Farmingdale model. So do you want to talk a little bit more about why that's such an important factor in the economic recovery?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll tackle the first part of that question first about taxes. So I have not raised property taxes since I got into office on January 1, 2018. And I think something that people don't understand is that when you look at your tax bill, about 70% of your property tax goes to your local school district. And, I send my kids to public school. I'm very happy with the schools in my district, but that's just the reality. If you look at the county portion of your taxes, it's usually about 15, 16%. And that's for the health department, for the police department, for the sheriff's department, for the roads, for the parks, for the sewage, for everything that we do. That's and I have not raised one penny in those taxes. So the school taxes are very high. We do have that 2% tax cap, so that helps a little. That does give a little breathing room. But you're absolutely right. Taxes are high, and it's expensive to live here, and we do lose young people. There are some good models. We brought up the Farmingdale model, affordable housing, apartments. Maybe not so affordable for everyone, but at least it's an option. That's not a single family home, that may be more affordable, that keeps young people, that revitalizes downtown. We know there's a wonderful opportunity in Westbury that the mayor there is going to take advantage of, especially with the third track train station, allowing for more commuting, which is another reason why they shouldn't be cutting back service on the MTA. The town of Oyster Bay actually did some good zoning stuff to allow for more downtown revitalization in Hicksville. So we're seeing this happen more and more because I think these zoning municipalities, the towns and the villages, they see that they can keep young people, they can keep empty nesters, and more importantly, it's business friendly. Your downtowns are supported, your small businesses are supported. You may have other businesses moving in because that's where the young people are, that's where the talent is. So it's a good way to attract business as well. So, it's been tough through the pandemic, but I think we're in a really good position now to capitalize on our downtowns, on our robust transit, on the Long Island Railroad, and get more of these kinds of communities done. We saw what happened in Farmingdale. You put a few hundred apartment buildings, and the downtown goes from a ghost town, a quiet little sleepy Nothingville, to a robust, fun place with bars, restaurants, shops where people want to go and hang out.
Yeah, no, it's important.
And importantly, they want to go and spend their money, which is also
exactly. No, we always talk about walkability, and like you said, when people feel that they can go to their local businesses and want to spend money in their community, they often will not have to travel, like you said, and put the money somewhere else. So that's important. But just to stick on that point before we transition to other topics, there is always the concern of topics like gentrification, and when it comes to attracting young, working professional class individuals, a lot of times from the city, like places like Brooklyn. Obviously, there's still the discussion of the equitable nature of the affordable housing, not just for minorities and low-income individuals, but also for seniors. So can you just talk about how that's being considered too, obviously, throughout this recovery process?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, we know that a lot of seniors have been isolated and they're more vulnerable to the virus. So we have a wonderful Office of the Aging run by a man named George Martinez, who does a great job in connecting seniors to services. We had a Meals on Wheels program that greatly expanded throughout the pandemic. We also pushed for our Department of Health to be allowed to vaccinate seniors. For a while, we weren't allowed to. The state said that we couldn't. We could only do the 1B, quote-unquote, essential worker category. And so we pushed, and then I'm happy we're allowed to now do that 60 and older population. And then back to housing, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who their kids are grown and they don't want to leave, but they can't afford to stay. And so these kinds of housing developments are really important for seniors as well. Seniors, that maybe they don't want to be driving around all the time. Maybe they want to be able to go to their local coffee shop and visit with friends, have more of that walkable vibe. Something very much that young people want as well. So it also makes it safer to get around. If everyone's speeding around on their cars all the time, it's hard to walk around. It's unsafe for seniors. So this is it's a public safety issue in some ways as well.
Okay, of course. And let's remind our listeners that they are listening to This Week Long Island News here on the Voice of Nassau Community College with myself, Jon Gallo, and Bill McIntyre, and of course with County Executive Laura Curran. So thank you. And could you give us your comments, knowing that there is a lot of economic stimulus that is going to be coming, thankfully, to the localities. Can you talk a little bit more about what you see as the impact of that happening?
Sure. So this was welcome news. I'm very grateful to Majority Leader. It's helpful that our Majority Leader is a New Yorker. Chuck Schumer and our entire delegation, our Congress people who've been very busy on this and keeping in touch with me and with the residents, which is great. So when we put together the 2021 budget, we knew that there was a real possibility we would not be getting help from Washington from a stimulus direct to counties. So I put my budget together without depending on that. Didn't raise taxes, didn't cut services, but we've been very fiscally disciplined, and we refinanced our debt at a very good rate using all of the tools at our disposal. So when we got this news that we're getting help directly to the county, that was obviously very, very welcome news, because this will make sure that our frontline workers have the resources they need, right? We're the ones with the health department, the police, all of that, social services, the morgue, that's us. So we'll have that. And we also want to make sure that we're supporting our schools and our businesses as well. This money will help local school districts reopen. It will help support local businesses, which in the end is good for everyone. So this is welcome news. Stimulus money for a place, we were among the hardest hit. When you remember at the beginning of this pandemic, it was Nassau County, right next to New York City. That was the hardest hit. We were the ones that, it sounds so grim to talk about, but we had to rent those extra refrigerated trucks for bodies. We weren't sure if our hospitals would make it. We were really taxed to the limit. But we got through it, and I'm happy that the federal government has recognized that and is going to help us, help our residents, help our businesses, and help our schools.
It seems it's a push toward normalcy, but it's not very. I don't know. It's not normal. We need a stimulus to keep us going. Nassau County and Long Island in general has usually been a great generator of revenue for.
Well, that's a great point. When you think about New York City and Long Island, the amount of money that we send in tax dollars to Washington so that they can give to places like Kentucky and those places that are the takers. We're usually the givers. They're usually the takers.
Amen.
I think it's fair that we're getting some of our tax dollars back. That's such a good point.
Yeah. It's, well, I mean, we've talked before, I'm really, the entertainment industry is my thing. I play in bands and stuff like that. So I'm really happy to see that for restaurants, I think it said, and clubs, a chunk of that stimulus money is supposed to be earmarked for those places. Because I'm afraid we're going to lose them.
I know. And I think about the musicians. I mean, it's been so hard. I have friends who are musicians, and I'm sure you've experienced this. You just can't play anywhere. It's horrible.
Yeah. No.
Weddings and all those things not happening. It really takes a toll.
Well, the other thing too is that the scope of musicians. Now there are your what we would call your legitimate musicians who play on Broadway. Yeah. And so they're allied with the union, and they're legit. So when this stimulus money comes down, they can actually ask for a cut of that legitimately, because they can show that that's their livelihood. But there are a lot of people, and I hate to say it this way, but a lot of guys play a backyard picnic and they get cash money, but that's what they're living on. But when the stimulus comes down, they don't get to say, "Hey, I make my living this way." Well, because they're not really aligned. It's been one of those. What would you say? It's one of those occupations where people they do a barter.
It's like gig workers, the gig economy.
Right,
people
exactly.
talk about, New York is notorious. But one good thing is that in that piece of legislation, they did extend the protections for UI benefits for folks who previously wouldn't have gotten them, like gig workers, like artists, like Uber drivers and stuff like that. So we do know that there's a lot that is coming in that pipeline.
Guys, I hate to do this. I'm so sorry, but I have to go. I have a line of duty ceremony that is just starting, and I have to go.
Oh, okay, we apologize.
The county executive needs to go be an executive. Okay.
Yep. Nope.
I'm so sorry, but I'll call you back. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Great. We'll have another time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Well, that was great. That she was going from point A to point B in a car someplace, and she called us on the phone and gave us some of her time. That's pretty cool.
That is doing live radio.
We got some questions answered. I mean, what'd you think, John? I think they're on top of it so far.
Oh yeah, like I said, there are a lot of good things to focus on. There's a lot of progress, and as we started the interview, recapping that now being the 12th of March, knowing where we were at the 12th of March last year, it is certainly has been just a surrealist kind of time warp, and we're happy to see that there is progress. The new administration at the federal level seems to be willing to give some of the things that the state and the counties have been arguing they need so badly to get out of this problem.
We're not an orphan anymore, apparently.
Well, we're not an unloved child at the very least, where again, that's a whole nother story. But having a Senator Majority Leader, Schumer obviously at the helm, knowing that there is still back and forths when it comes to different issues like the Long Island Railroad and police reform and all these other things that are still hot, kind of button issues and very, very important, that we can say that at least, we'll get back to hopefully being able to deal with these other issues kind of detached from more detached from COVID being still the overarching kind of thing.
Well, and you remember you said, a year ago, and for some reason etched in my mind is that number 700. I think 700 people a day were dying. Yeah. At one point in the last year, when you think about that, that's, I don't know. I think we looked at that number and just we didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. No,
it still seems almost again too hard to believe. And we talked to Faith Jesse from Newsday, who spoke about still even the second wave, and knowing it maybe wasn't as necessarily daunting as the first wave, it's still to the people who were there, whether you're in the hospital or whether you work in the hospital and you have to go back to your family, that sense of anxiety.
I've been notified too that that's just in New York State.
What is
700 people a day?
Oh yeah, of course. No, it was up
nationally
3,
now.
It was over 3,000.
Nationally now we're up to 520,000 people that have passed away from.
Yeah, they talk about it being obviously more than the wars basically combined with Vietnam through World War II, I believe. And it just is.
Yeah, think about that. In Vietnam, I think the number was 58,000. That's how many troops we lost.
It is 58,
and this is almost 10 times that.
No, it's
and it only took us 1 year.
No, it's mind-numbing. And I know people want to say, well, I don't think hopefully people want to say that argument anymore. But in the beginning, we heard, well, what about the flu? It kills,
they still do.
Tens of thousands. No, I get it. And, you talk about these other illnesses. But the mere fact that something that wasn't on the radar, wasn't on the map, now, is on the same playing field with the things that are most deadly, causes in America, whether it be motor vehicle accidents, whether it be heart disease, cancer, these other types of things that we have as ubiquitous, unfortunate realities of life, to see that something just comes in out of left field, and all of a sudden it's, up there with those. It certainly has got to make you at least kind of just take a step back and realize that, regardless of what your politics are, regardless of what your, kind of thoughts on other kind of issues are, that you just have to, take a step back and realize that that's a lot of people's lives. That's why I said there's quantitative, but there's qualitative. There's numbers, but they're neighbors. They're not just abstract computer things. They're people. They're just.
And I think you can, when you think of 520,000 people, then think of how many lives they affected. Of each person, is like a nuclear family is 2 kids and mom and dad, but some bigger families and then extended families. This is millions of people we're talking about that, know somebody or have somebody, or their lives will be totally changed by the fact that this occurred.
No, exactly. And, that'll happen for generations. There'll be people, with stories about, I remember when, they tell their grandkids that this happened, and, hopefully there won't be something like this for a long time. But, we have to be vigilant because, as we know, there are variants. These things do change. These things do evolve. And we have to stay on top of it. It is something that we do not want to see, be the issue that it has been. It'll still continue to be an issue, like I said, but hopefully not reach the acute health.
John, do you think that this is going to be one of those, this is going to turn into like, for the population, like a flu thing where every year we're going to go back and get a booster or
That's what I still need to understand a little bit better, to be honest. I know we talked with Robert Brodsky, and I know, other reporters have talked about that there still isn't a ton of clarity where, in terms of some of the vaccines, like let's say the Johnson & Johnson, where it's a live vaccine, it's not an RNA vaccine.
Right.
So does that mean like the flu shot that therefore you'd have to come back, whether it's every year or every couple of years? I think it's like the tetanus shot, where you have to get a booster every 5 years or so. So it's a really good question. Yeah. And
I mean, I was a kid. I think it was 19. I think it was 19. I'm going to say 59, maybe 1960. Okay. I got a polio shot.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I took a sugar cube. We went down to the local high school, and there were a bunch of people around. I remember that, but I remember, I think my mom or my dad was holding me. That's how young I was, and I got a sugar cube. Some people, you'll see, they have the mark on them from when they got the polio shot. It was kind of, I don't know, but it left a mark on you. And you could, when people went to the beach, they'd look, oh, yep, there's your polio shot. We haven't seen that in years, but, and I got it once. That was it. I didn't have to go back. I didn't get a booster. I didn't get, so I'm just wondering, how did that happen? And yet, now we're talking about, even the flu. Well, you got to get a flu shot.
We need to talk to a virologist to understand that a little bit better, I think. Like you said, that's certainly beyond, I think, the layman's head. But we'll go to that another time. Right now, we are being joined, thankfully, by our next guest. After we did have on County Executive LIRR Curran, we're happy to be joined now by Phil Eng, the Long Island Railroad chairman, and we're grateful for your time. Mr. Eng, we know it's been a busy week for riders and for, I'm sure, your staff and yourself. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks for coming on.
For having me.
Of course. So let's start with some of the good news, and then we'll go into, kind of recapping everything that's been happening the last week. But let's start. We were talking about it with the county executive. What do you anticipate as the positive impact of the new funds coming from the federal stimulus relief package from COVID?
Well, the federal stimulus relief package and, the support of Senate Majority Leader Schumer to be able to deliver this, the Biden administration, absolutely gives us the ability to have some breathing room. The concerns, obviously, with the revenue streams that we were facing and the financial picture that was there, this gives us the ability to not only look at how we can continue to support the island with Long Island Railroad service for today, but gives us an opportunity to have a better certainty with some of the things that we need to do for next year. Obviously, we still need to look at how we continue to deliver service and lure riders back for 2023 and outer years, because we know that we can't always keep going back to the federal government and keep asking for these types of packages. But we're optimistic that this package has really given us the ability to look longer term and feel much confident the ability to continue service, because Long Island Railroad is going to be an integral part of the economic recovery.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a lifeline. Yeah. And we know that not just from your position with LIRR, but as a lifelong Long Islander. We know that we're all connected in one way or another through ourselves or our families to the Long Island Railroad. So just to clarify, though, in terms of the funding, is it correct, as it's been reported, that I think it's supposed to be about $6.5 billion? Is that the figure that you're hearing might be coming in this package once it's completely put into works?
That is the figure, John, and that goes atop the previous aid that the MTA has received.
Yep.
And not only is that just important that we're getting $6.5 billion, but the aid that goes to the state and local governments is also important, because that will give them the ability to start not only fighting the pandemic, but restoring the economies with the local businesses. So many of those stores and people that are looking to that help, that will also restart them. And then as that restarts, the money that we rely on from state and local support will also have more security in it as well. So it is really helpful in so many ways to us.
Of course.
That's $6.5 billion number. From what I see, it's earmarked for the MTA and the LIRR. Are you going to split that with them? I mean, is the Long Island Railroad assured that this money will filter through the MTA and actually come to you?
Well, yes, the MTA will get the funds, and just as with all the funding, they will distribute that not only to Long Island Railroad, New York City Transit, Metro North, bridges and tunnels. But it will be used to support all of our needs because we are interconnected in so many ways. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our riders, when they get to Manhattan, many of them take the subways. And there's that interconnectivity that is so important to the ridership and the economy. And also, that will also help support some funding that was lost for congestion pricing. And again, the Long Island Railroad will get a portion of that when that is fully implemented. And, that is something that is another steady revenue stream once implemented that we can rely on.
Yep, that's important.
Well, I just think one of the many pressures that you're under that I don't think the ridership maybe doesn't appreciate so much is that the MTA, the MTA is the parent company, so to speak. So a lot of the things you have to react to are things that they put in place.
Well, the MTA is the parent company, but we like to consider ourselves one MTA, and we do need to work together. Obviously, I'm an advocate for the Long Island Railroad needs. I'm cognizant of the other needs of the other agencies because, quite frankly, if any one of us were not to be successful, it really hurts the other agencies. So many of us who do ride the railroad do, whether they walk or rely on mass transportation in the city, it really is counterintuitive that they need to be successful in Manhattan and New York City. And in fact, we hope, when we finish some major infrastructure works like the third track mainline expansion, East Side access, we did finish double track along the Ronkonkoma branch. That gives us the ability then to lure people from the west to come and work on Long Island, right? The reverse commute. And that's going to be important because with COVID and businesses reinventing themselves, that normal AM Western trip and normal PM trip home may change. You'll have a lot of businesses that know that they can establish as facilities in other parts, and we may have to be ready to adapt to that changing ridership.
Yeah, certainly.
And that's what those projects will give us some flexibility and operational capacity to do.
Yep, exactly. The county executive was just referencing the Farmingdale model, kind of having, again, these kind of more bustling centers around the LIRR branches and trying to lure some of those folks, maybe young professionals who might have considered living in Brooklyn or Manhattan, like you said, to maybe live out here where there's a little more space and you can still kind of have those creature comforts. But segueing now from that discussion to the fact that ridership, as you've been mentioning, is down approximately 75%. Obviously, this economic, kind of downtime affects everything across the board. But still, nonetheless, those initial enacted cuts after they were announced and after, obviously, people were on the trains and, there were photos on social media, certainly people had, very passionate reactions, we'll say. But there have been announcements that, there is a restoration plan. And I know there's a timeline on that. So can you just recap on, where we were and where we will be now going forward?
Sure. Well, John, the federal aid is absolutely immense as far as giving us a little more breathing room and security for the near term. Having said that, we still have to look out in the outer years because we still have a financial deficit that is predicted beyond 2022. And but the service plan that went into effect this past Monday was based on the fact that ridership had dropped. And ridership was hovering around 24% of our pre-pandemic levels. And obviously, as you mentioned, on Monday, we had some isolated trains where the ridership gravitated to. We knew that we had to make adjustments, and we were prepared to make adjustments. We made some that evening. We made some the next day. I'm pleased to say that ridership has leveled off across the fleets. Having said that, though, we also realize that the folks still need a little more level of comfort. And, that's why a few days ago we announced that we will go back to the pre-March 8th service plan. The teams are working very closely with our labor partners to make sure that we can deliver that aggressively for March 29th. But having said that, we're also looking to see where else maybe we can make some adjustments before March 29th. To further give our riders the comfort level that they need, that they deserve. And as I've said, we're committed to doing that, to continuously monitor and make adjustments. And we've been doing that since the beginning of the pandemic. If we saw ridership increase, if we saw businesses being reopened, we were ready to, and we did make changes, adding service to the riders.
Yep. I think that's a stark thing for Long Islanders. When I live on the South Shore of Long Island, so the Babylon branch, when you go past the parking lots, the train stations, to see them empty is it's alarming almost. Normally it looks like a car dealership, with all the car parked, they're jammed. But I think recently it seems as though it's starting to pick up again. That people may actually, maybe it wasn't just happenstance that a train or two was crowded. People may actually be going back to work. I don't know if you'll ever achieve the 100%, level of ridership again, because a lot of people found out they can work from home, and that may be a permanent situation for many. But I think it's coming back. It seems, I get that feeling. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
I hope that is the case, and I hope that I have that problem with people coming back faster than predicted. The projections do show that will be around 86% of ridership in 2024. I hope that they come back sooner, and I hope that would be ideal for all of us. But we do know that some businesses will rethink. And you know what? For folks that work 5 days a week, if you have the ability to telework and add a little bit to your quality of life, I'm all for that. Right. But we also know that the railroad was actually growing in the past few years, where we carried record ridership. And a lot of that was not just the morning commute in and the evening commute home. A lot of that was to support transit-oriented development type and tourism and people going to different destinations. We saw a lot of growth in the off-peak and on the weekends. So I'm optimistic that will continue when things reopen, beaches reopen and theaters reopen and sporting events reopen. All of that is something that we've been building towards to support, and at the same time support the workforce that relies on the railroad. So it's a combination.
We're pulling for you.
And that's what we've been trying to do throughout the pandemic, adjusting as we see and being prepared to adjust when things change.
Well, we're pulling for you because, like you said, if everybody wins if everybody does well,
exactly.
We know you're under a lot of pressure. That's a tough spot to be in.
And the personnel there, of course, across the board. Like I said, we're happy to hear that MTA workers are eligible for vaccinations now. And we know we've talked to you in the past about the technology in terms of the air scrubbers and the technology to monitor the actual train population. So we're good to see the technological improvements that are coming out of this managing of the crisis. So thank you as always, again, for your time, Chairman Eng. We're really appreciative of it. And like I said, where can our listeners and where can folks who want to find out the most up-to-date information about their commute and what they need to know in that restoration plan, where should they go? MTA websites, or what do you think would be best?
Well, absolutely MTA website, but I will say that the Train Time, Long Island Railroad Train Time app is really one of what I consider one of the premier one-stop shopping information for our riders. Not only will you have all the schedules, you will have, as you mentioned, John, the loading information. We recently updated last week where you have car by car actual loading. You can see how many people are in each car before you board. You could allow you to pre-position yourself on the platform, or if you happen to be in a car that you feel a little uncomfortable with, you could see which car has more space, and you can walk through and find a seat in a different car. So that is state of the art. And you know what? Copying is like probably the best form of flattery, and we've been receiving requests from across the world, actually, in rail agencies asking us how we did it. So we're sharing that information. But yes, absolutely.
There you go.
That's one of the best places to get information.
Okay, so everyone go and do that. And
thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. I know you're busy.
So we look forward to having another conversation down the road. But until then, be well and have a good weekend. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You all stay safe, and thank you for giving me a few moments.
Yep.
Thank you. Again. Thank you very much. Wow.
Yeah, Bill. It's definitely a busy time. Like I said, talking to the executive, now talking to Chairman Eng, knowing just how tough of a time it is to figure out how to keep people happy, how to keep people safe, but also to try to, spur the recovery efforts. It is not a enviable kind of position. Obviously, they get paid to make these tough decisions, but we're all human and we're only as good as the kind of support staffs we have around them. So hopefully, and it looks like, they have the people in place who can help them kind of find clarity through a lot of cloudiness, we'll say. And, that's what you can do, and, try to make the public informed so that they can have their own opinions and that they can, be a part of, shaping what their government does for them.
What's wild? I took the rail. Did you ever commute, John? Did you ever commute?
More than I'd like to, yes.
Yeah, right. I did it for about, I guess it was 10 years I commuted into the city. And I worked for AT&T. I took the train, I think, for about 7 of those years. And then I drove because I was also a shop steward with the Communications Workers of America. So, and I can tell you that taking the train is a lot better than driving it. And I'm sure now it's even worse driving it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that, I commuted mostly by car, but whenever I had the opportunity before pandemic, I would always prefer to take the train. It's just the nature of being able to sit, not having to worry about everything. You feel like the time isn't so arduous because, you get the stations, you know where it is. Right. Like I said, you can look at your phone, you're going to worry about it. But, when you're in the car, you got to, stop and go. I
actually started commuting to the city when that train strike happened. I guess that was 1978, 79, or I forget what year it was. But we actually used to drive into Queens and then take a subway from there into the city.
Yeah, but that's what happened.
All the time I took the train, I could think of how many, there were a few times when it became inconvenient or something got screwed up. And mostly every day, I showed up for a 6 o'clock in the morning train. The train was there. And when I left work and I went to Penn Station to get, track 19, it was always the same. The train was there. I used to not marvel at it, but I always say, people will complain about anything. But for the amount of times, the amount of trains that they had to run and the amount of times that things didn't go right, I always felt like the Long Island Railroad did a pretty damn good job.
Well, it's kind of that argument of, when you're in a plane, you can complain about things, but the mere fact is that, it's still impressive and it's still a great feat of society that we can fund these types of important, public programs and public utilities, whether it's something that has to do with energy or something that has to do with transportation. Obviously, we want to make them as perfect as possible. Obviously, I think folks have every right to advocate and say, well, my commute isn't as good as I want it to be. Or, I have a wheelchair and I think that, funds should be put into these types of ADA, kind of revitalizations, whatever it may be. But at the same time, at the base level, considering that you can relatively rely short of some natural disaster or a pandemic, that the train is going to be there. It might be there 5-10 minutes late, something like that, but you're going to get on it and you're going to go back home. You're not going to walk. You're not going to have to call a cab, hopefully. And, even if there's a problem, theoretically, they have a bus or something to take you where you need. So, like I said, certainly, we echo everyone's frustration. And when you see those photos on social media, knowing what's going on in the world with the pandemic, of course, it's not a good look. Of course, they're going to be out there, trying to, in a sense, do a little bit of damage control, but it's what it is. It's no different than the vaccination issue, a million other things that, things have challenges or hiccups, when they first get rolled out. And all you can do is make your voice heard and hope that it impacts the positive outcome afterwards.
Yeah.
So I got a few minutes here, Bill, still. I know that there were some things in the papers. I can tell you that I know that there's some village elections coming up, which are going to be interesting. And to be honest, I'm not overly informed about. So hopefully next week we'll have someone on, maybe 2 people from an organization that might be able to give us a little recap on what happened there and what the significance of those village elections are. Because I know they're kind of confusing. There's all these different kind of independent parties and all these different kind of things. So I'm not too familiar with that.
The big news item in the last few weeks, I guess, has been the governor and his issues with the.
It continues.
What do you think's going on there, John? What do you think's going on there?
My phone just notified me as we're recording this now that some Congress members, additionally from New York, I believe, are now calling for a resignation. There's been at least another 1 or 2. I can't even keep it straight, to be honest, at this point since we last spoke. I think another 2 accusations. Some of them being more severe than even the other ones, and I think still something to maybe reiterate, because it's important, is that not only is it the nature of potential alleged sexual harassment or, kind of making someone feel uncomfortable in the workplace, and it's your colleague, this is your boss. This is every boss's boss in state government. So certainly when it comes to the power dynamic and the, potential hypocrisy of someone who was trying to, as we said, wrap themselves in kind of the Me Too kind of movement and fighting, these types of issues from their position, it certainly would be really tragic. And, for what it is, again, the alleged misconduct, if it's borne out, and that's what's going to happen now, there's going to be an investigation. They've named the people there, they're going to look into it, and then they'll come to a conclusion. They've started an impeachment process in the assembly. If you look at the constitutional charter, it seems very, 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 very unlikely to happen. I think the only time it's happened was 100 years ago for some guy for some kind of campaign finance issue. But go ahead.
And again, what has been our battle cry? It's cooler heads need to prevail. I'm really tired of this knee-jerk reaction, and I'll call it what it is: crap. Nobody knows who investigated anything. Nobody. But we're calling for resignations. We're calling for this. I'm hoping that the governor holds fast. And first of all, yes, or the Me Too movement and all that. But this, I don't know. I got a bad feeling about this. We got a Republican out in Suffolk County who says he wants to be the governor, and I'm getting the feeling that this is this. I mean, it could be. And again, I'm speculating, so I'll say that up front.
There certainly could, are political motives at play.
Big ones. Donald Trump is about to go in front of a judge in the state of New York, and the governor of New York will have a big influence on the outcome of not necessarily the verdict, but certainly any pardons that might come or be necessary. And it seems to me that people would be kind of wanting to maneuver themselves into positions to help that happen. Well, and the governor is not going to help.
No, I understand that. But at the same time, it's certainly, you can't make the claim that these women, without knowing anything like you said about them, would want to be part of some kind of, political cabal to, help the former president. I know there's some, theories about that being tossed around. But in general, like, the main point is that we need to see what this investigation bears out. There still are kind of nuances to that process when you think about the future of Attorney General Letitia James wanting to likely run for the governor's office.
Good point, right?
The conversation of some of the other people who are calling for his resignation also probably wanted to join that field if that is the case. But at the same time, like I said, we're at a stage in humanity where we have to realize that, yes, we need to have investigations, innocent to proven guilty, but at the same time, we can't just have that be a blanket that says, well, we shouldn't hear out and take every single complaint, on its merits and at least hear it out and give people the respect and the platform to express, what they believe, again, was, what they allege. But then therefore have, like I said, objective third parties review the facts and then make a decision. And then ultimately, if that decision is made in his favor, then that's it. If it's not made in his favor, then it comes to the rubber meeting the road, what happens. But we're still a while away now from the nursing home problem.
And in a perfect society, that would happen. But my, recollection, I'm reminded of Al Franken and our New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who called for his removal before anybody said anything about investigating anything. And in my mind, we lost a good senator. I think Al Franken was for the people. He was well-spoken. He was well thought out. And we got rid of him because everybody got on the, get rid, I think we lost. I think we as people lost.
But I think the other problem is, like we said, that you can't be hypocritical. You can't call for the resignation of President Trump because he's not in your party, and then, or vice versa. You can't call for, the resignation of someone not in your party and then not call for it when it's in your party.
True. And to do that, just to answer that, it was a Democratic aide that brought this up to start with. It was also a Democratic aide who brought up the numbers about the nursing homes. That wasn't a Republican who found out some dirt on their opponent. those were people who were aides of the governor that offered that information to journalists to say that this count is wrong. Something's going on here.
No, you're right. But again, it's complicated when it's only two people in the room. There was that photograph of someone at a wedding that seemed to be at the very least uncomfortable in the moment. And then we do have to point out that again, for Al Franken, who you referenced before, that there was a photograph that was the main point of contention that showed behavior, that showed in an image, whether someone wants to say, well, that's out of context, blah 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 blah. That's a whole nother story. But the point is that when there is,
it wasn't. That was the story. That was the story. What I'm saying. Because that was a comedic. That was a comedic picture that people took out of context and decided that they were going to go get this guy.
That's the debate, though. And if it's a joke to Al Franken, but it's not a joke to the person he's touching, then is it a joke? That's a shame. Like I said, we don't have the time in any way, shape, or form to get into the nuances of that conversation.
Although they already did. They already talked about that. And the lady that picture was in was a comedian, and she was part of a skit. They already did that. We don't have to do that again.
No, I hear you. But like I said, when there is photo evidence is the point, though, it does, make people have that perception, and it does have to be taken into consideration. But all that said, Bill, there'll be more time for that conversation. We're going to get a few minutes here left till close. Obviously, we always want to thank everyone for, being a part of our airtime here. Our guest today, of course, County Executive LIRR Curran, who we know was busy and got called into the line of duty mid-conversation. I know we touched a lot of things with that. I did get a little bit distracted. I did have to handle something, and thank you for kind of holding that for a moment. I appreciate that, Bill. And then, that went well. I'd like to think overall we'll have her on hopefully another time to talk about not just the Islanders, but everything else that's important. And obviously,
we got some good information today. Yeah, and for me, one of the big points is that I probably won't have to pay $30 to park at the Coliseum to get my vaccine.
I would think that wouldn't make any sense. I know people said the same thing about Yankee Stadium. To be honest,
I felt like the question was half kind of funny, like I was joking, but people asked me that because of the thing that happened. When they reopened, and people were kind of shocked that they were paying, $50 or whatever it was to park.
Yeah, I understand. But like I said,
in any event, we're getting the clock on the wall. And the clock on the wall is saying it's time to.
It is. But let's remind our listeners at This Week's Long Island News. You can find where you get your podcast. Obviously, at TWLI News on Twitter, at This Week's Long Island News on Instagram and Facebook, and wherever else you follow the socials. So go do that. We'll put out information about the form for at-home vaccinations. We'll try to put out some other information from our conversation today, and we'll just keep the conversation going. So thanks as always. Excellent. Until next time.
Great show, John. Good work. You dug up a lot of stuff, and thank you for the notes you gave me before we started. I learned a lot doing this show because I'm just another guy on Long Island, and I have the questions that I think people would like to know the answers to. In any event, we'll see you next time. Same time, same place, right here on 90.3 WHPC.